Hey folks, welcome to this Worldographer 2025 101 video. I'm the creator of the program, Joe Wetzel, and what you see in front of you is an auto-generated map that we did. This video is a fourth in a series of videos that we've been doing on Worldographer 2025, going over the basics of it, giving an overview of the main functionality from a world kingdom perspective when you're making a large area map, and we'll be doing other map types in the future as well. But in this video, we have one more thing that I want to go back to in shapes. Then we're going to get through labels, layers, the fog of war, trace underlay functionality, all of this stuff, get all that done in less than 30 minutes. So let's get to it. As I said, this is a auto-generated map, and one thing I wanted to show you that I didn't do previously in the shapes video, in the prior 101 video, is talk about shipping lines and dotted and dashed lines in particular. What I want to do first is, sometimes the auto generator is going to stick a road over some ocean here, and so you can just go ahead and select that by clicking the select button and clicking any of those points, and then hitting delete or your delete key, and that will get rid of it for you. And then I'm going to create a new line. I'm going to use a preset of shipping. And what that's going to do is it's giving me a color of white and, importantly, a dotted stroke type. There's also a dash stroke type. And previously we went through some of these others, the railroad and the elevation lines in the prior Worldographer 2025 video. So with that out of the way, one other thing to look at is, do we want our points to snap or not on the grid, or a quarter of the way across each hex, or half or 3/4? We're going to leave that off, and I'm just going to create a shipping line from between two of these port cities kind of. So I have this city here on the coast, which in fact is even called port. So I'm going to start a shipping line there by just clicking, and then I'm going to have it hug in near the coast in the sea lanes a little bit first. And then I'm going to have it kind of pick a narrow channel going across. And then we're going to kind of come down along the coast here and into here. And then I can even, if I wanted to, I can go into the features drawer here. Let me make these a little bit bigger. Oh, didn't mean to go that big. Let's go with 60. And then I can say I want to filter for towns, and I can stick a town here instead next to that city. And then I could even go back to the shapes drawer and pick a road type, and then go hit line and click from here to here. And I can go back. If I wanted to move that tail end point there, I can click any of these points, zoom way in there, and then click and drag that if I'm going like that. So that's shipping lines. That's one thing that I wanted to get into this series of videos, just to give you a full effect of how to replicate the Mistara style icons from the 80s D&D products. So let's get on to labels. Labels have a bunch of controls that are mirrored on the features tab here. And if you wanted to have a feature, a label that's tied to a feature, you can fill it in here and then use these controls to specify the font and so forth. But all those are pretty much replicated over here, so we're going to use this. So one other thing that you might want to look at is sometimes the nations get placed, the nation names, the labels get placed in such a way that they're overlapping something. Now these two actually happen to luckily not be overlapping the city names over there, and same with this one, and even that one. So I'm looking, okay, so here we go. So here's one where it's overlapping the icon a little bit and overlapping that name. So I can just hit select on the labels tab over here, select that label, and move it as needed. And then if I wanted to do some of these other settings, they would require, well, alignment is going to require a 2-line label. So let's just go back over here and let's do a new label. And we're going to say Asinalor Bay. We're going to stick that in here, for example, right? Now, one thing that I want to do, though, is I can go back and select it. Now, if I had changed these settings before placing it, then it would have applied to it when I initially put it down. But since I already put it down, I can play with some of these other settings. So center, we can just right justify or left justify those things as well. I'm going to leave that on center though, but it's only going to apply if you have multiple lines in your label. Rotate, sometimes you'll have a river and you want to, kind of rotate your label to match the flow of that river, you can do that there. Layer, we've talked about layers previously in other videos here because it's kind of a cross-cutting feature where, terrain, features, shapes, and labels all use layers, but that's here. We'll talk about that a little bit more in this video, but you can set it to a layer by specifying it here in this drop-down. Style, you can configure the styles with the configure button, which will open up in a moment, but the first thing I want to do, or the next thing I want to do rather, is I want to switch this to a different style because it's not a nation. I want to keep my labels consistent. The nice thing about using styles for your labels and setting them up beforehand is that it will apply throughout the whole map, so that if you later change a font, for example, it would apply to all of the labels of that type instead of having to change them individually. So, a bay isn't a minor thing, but it's not a major thing. It's not a continent. So I'm just going to go with geography, and that's the default settings for that. And then it's not GM only, but if I wanted to make it GM only, this works just like the features and so forth, where if I set that to GM only and I turn off GM only here, then it will disappear. But I'm going to leave that as it is. Now, it's not a political thing or it's not a nation, so I'm going to call it a natural feature. So I'm just going to say natural here. And I can add others as well. These checkboxes control which view levels that it's on. So in Worldographer, you can have multiple view levels where you have like kind of a world level and a continent level, kingdom and province, and you can have, say, 6 hexes across in the continent level map as per hex in the world level map, or any other number you want, and so on. Same thing for kingdom, can have 6 more per hex in the continent level map, or whatever number you want to choose, and so forth. Let's see, let me just select another one just for the heck of it, and say that this country was special, and I don't want to have that particular country using the global style. I can say go ahead and use a custom style, and then it's going to use the settings that are over here on this side. And I can, set the font to something else, like this Algerian that was very reminiscent to anybody using D&D products over the years, especially back in the 80s, or any OSR type stuff. Uses that quite often, and of course that white isn't very prominent, so we can make it into a solid black. Because that black overlaps that road, if you wanted to add an outline, you can give it an outline and you can specify what the color is. These color pickers, these medicine dropper things, will let you match that color to something else. So if for some reason we wanted to have it match this tan or whatever you want to call it, we can just click on the map and it will update that picker with that. If you want to update the size, if you want to adjust the size, I should say, you can do so there. Bold and italics, now that's not going to do anything for some fonts like this one. At least in the version that I have doesn't have support for that stuff. But if you were to pick something really common, like if we went back to our Arial and we hit bold and we hit italic, then those things do take effect. And then finally, background is another way to offset it from the terrain that's underneath there, particularly like if you don't want to use the outline or you're not getting the effect that you want, you can use the background color there. And even though that's saying white and it's a little bit off, it's because it's got that selection setting on top there, which is making it yellow tinted. But if I turn off the select, then you can see that it's back to the white. So that is pretty much everything there. The only other thing that I'd say, let me turn that off, is you can go into the outline color picker, pull up custom color, and go here. And one of the things that I like to do is I like to play with the opacity and make it like around 50% opacity, just because that gives me a better, it gives me some contrast, but it doesn't make the label pop as much as to the point where it's distracting. That's just a personal preference. You can do it or not, it's up to you. So then if I look at style, I want it to show the configuring styles. Now we're not going to do it here. It's just going to open up this dialog. You can get to it from this button here. Also up on the configure menu is configure label styles. But that brings up this dialog here. And here you can just change the font. All those same settings are here for those styles. And then if you wanted to have a new style, you can add a new row and give it a name and adjust its properties. So that's how you handle styles for labels in Worldographer. Deselect and delete, obviously. So if I wanted to remove that one, I can delete it there with the delete button. So that covers labels. Layers, there's really not a lot more to show with layers that we haven't shown before in the other videos. As I said, we've touched on this in each of the videos because it does um, kind of cross-cut and apply to all of them. But if I wanted to turn off a layer, I can turn off a layer. If for some reason I want to make a layer less prominent to still show it but not have it pop as much, you can play with the opacity of a particular layer. So that's kind of cool. You can move these around. So if I don't want my grid on the top, because some people do want their features, for example, to show up above the grid. So you can move those up and down and around. We'll get into configuring the grid fully as well in a future video, but right now we're just going to focus on these couple of things. Fog of War is interesting and kind of fun to use. If you want to share your map with your players, I can hit the select area and say that they are from that kingdom. They know this peninsula essentially, but they don't know anything else about the rest of the world. I can have that select area on, which you can also get to up on the edit menu for a select area. And then I can say hide all but selected. Now, if I turn off GM only as well, then everything but that area, all those hexes and any fractional hexes that we happen to touch with our selected area will disappear. And then I can, share my screen or export this section of the map or whatever I want to do like that. Then I can go back to select area again and say now they've explored the world a little bit more. They've gone down this road and I want to show them this next section. I can now show selected again here, and it's going to show that stuff there. And then I can select the area again and say I revealed too much. I don't want them to know about this. Then I can go ahead and say hide selected. And then I can also hide all but a selected area. So if I wanted to narrow the scope to this area, again, I revealed too much or whatever, I can set it like this, and now only that area is showing. So this is a way for you to kind of share the map with your players, share your screen or share exported images, whatever works for you with this functionality here. This is the Fog of War exploration functionality. And then the last tab over here is Trace Underlay. And what I'm going to do here is I'm going to select a file to trace in another map. I had just created a blank 40 by 60 map area, and I just went to New World Kingdom Map, and I set it to be 40 by 60 here, and I set it to all one terrain blank, as opposed to having it generating terrain with a full world like I did for the other map. Okay, so hitting that button there, it brought up a file chooser, and I was able to choose a file to highlight or to use to trace over, but it has no width and no height, so that's why you're not seeing it. So once I set both of those, so now it's 40 tiles wide, but it's 0 tiles high. So if I set it to be 60 tiles high, we've got it now. I'm going to zoom out just so we see a good portion of it. And there you go. This is a map that I want to trace over because my writer on one of our other projects, Exploration Decks, coming soon from Inkwell Ideas, where we've got it up on BackerKit in a preview mode right now, but you can check it out and get a full PDF download of 54 cards that Andrew Shields has written. Primarily Andrew. I wrote a couple of things at the end, but Andrew's written a whole bunch of really cool, fun generators, charts of ideas that can really help you populate a campaign area or a hex crawl. I'm just shifting the upper corner a fraction of a hex just so that it's truly centered. Not that it really matters for this. Anyway, Andrew went through using these random charts that he's created, and there's lots of great artwork too, primarily from the Forge Studios for that, of each of these locations. And then each location, for example, there's like a gray skull like castle entrance, and then he gives you a whole bunch of unusual ways to enter the castle or unusual things about the leaders of the castle or things like that is what this is all about. We'll have a link to it down below as well. But so I just wanted to shift this off a little bit. And I'm also going to set the opacity to, well, I'll leave it on to full for the moment. So then I can place terrain, and I can come down here and I want to put down some water C to kind of be a barrier between these two, and I can just trace around like this. And I'm just going to be really quick about this because really you won't need me to make the whole map in order to see what's going on. Back down to water here. Let me just do the basic water ocean. And for this, I just need to kind of, well, it does help to kind of get somewhat close to that initial line. But we're going to be doing a nearest neighbor fill in a moment. So I don't want it to be too much sea on the edges here, but I don't need to fill in all the rest of that. And then, I've got a bunch of mountain stuff here, so I'm going to throw in some mixed forest mountain here. And I'm going to say that the southern area is closer to the pole. So I'm going to do some evergreen forest down here, evergreen forested mountain down here. And I'm going to do some deciduous forest mountain up here. And of course, I want to sprinkle in a little bit. Well, let me do a little bit more of those just to get that. And like I said, you won't really need me to do the whole thing. You won't want me to do the whole thing because even though this is going to be relatively quick compared, it's not, it's not trivial time-wise. I'm going to put in some grassland over here and a little bit more grassland over here, but also have some open area, I think. I'm not quite sure what symbol he was using for that there. He can come back to me and let me know, no, I meant to do this. And like I said, we do have more evergreen towards the bottom and some mixed forest stuff here. And we're going to put in some more grassland maybe in here and some more farmland in there. And yeah, and then hills, of course, got to do some hills. So I can have some plain hills that aren't really grassy or anything. And then I've got my mixed forest hills here, and I've got some forest hills, or deciduous, I guess I should say. And yeah, and then I need to put something down there in that main area. Again, I'm going to make that mostly open stuff. So I'm going to stick this here in there. Now you can see you can lose, getting back to the main point of this here, you can see that you can lose some of the underlying map if you fill in too much of it. So you can just play with the opacity setting here. So I can set this to be, I can set this to be 50%, say, and then I can still see the underlying map as well as the map I'm creating. And you can play with that, shift it to 40 or 60 or whatever you need in order to get the effect that you want. Let me just throw in a little bit more hilly stuff here because I do see that we've got some forested hills down here maybe. Do some of that, do some of this. So that'll be our map. That's kind of pretty much enough for me to go on here now. Yeah. Oh, yeah, let's throw in some swamp. Why not? Let's make some, let's make a little bit of swamp somewhere around here just so that we've got a representation of other terrain types and around there. And I'm going to put a little bit more of this in here. Otherwise, our C is going to go crazy and be pretty, again, it's a nearest neighbor fill. So if we have, that we're going to do, it's called the terrain wizard up on our top tools menu. And that nearest neighbor fill, these 3 hexes here, these 2 hexes here, will be split evenly. And if I don't want that C to be that large, then I do need to come closer to the C so that it doesn't fill in those. And if there's 2 terrain types that are equidistant, then it just randomly picks between those ones that are equidistant from that particular location. So yeah. So then I do this, and with that, let me just throw in a couple more of these. Like I said, I'm just getting paranoid about the nearest neighbor fill and how that's going to be reflected. So now I can go up here to Tools and Terrain Wizard, and boom. So you can see it's filled all that in. Let me turn Trace Underlay to 100% so you can see what it's filled in there. Now, you can see on the mini map here, I wasn't focused on the bottom half of the map, so it just did a, it's going to be all just these couple of terrain types. Actually, I do want to undo that because there is an option that will make this look even better. If I hit undo and I go to terrain, if I add in shuffle, that's going to find related terrain that are configured to show up occasionally when you do fills of areas, where it's going to look at the grassland and it's going to find a couple of similar to grassland types, and it's going to fill those in instead. So I can go to Tools, Terrain Wizard this time, and you can see that it did, in fact, here's one farmland thing, but here's some extra grassland that popped up, here's some plain mountains that popped up, and so forth. So you've got all that. And then if I just go back to Trace Underlay, and if I want to get those other details shown here in the map, I can go up to the Shapes menu for my road, for example. Let's find Preset Road and do a line. And in fact, I'll do a curve because I do like the looks of curves sometimes here. So I can just go here and click a couple of anchor points and then do this. Now that's not exactly, I double clicked there by accident, but that's not exactly following the route that Andrew had drawn before, because again, well, so we'll adjust it. We can go back and we can fix these things. Again, it filled in some extra C into this, and that's what's causing, oh, yep, move the whole thing there. There we go. So something like that. You get the idea. We can continue drawing this down here like that. And then he's also got, a homesteads, which I'm going to say is something similar to, so he's got the Cayman homesteads. I'm going to say that's a village, and I can even label it here, like we were talking about earlier in the video. And so I can just stick this down wherever along that road. So you get an idea of what Trace Underlay will do for you. It lets you trace over any map that you want, any PNG or JPEG type map, and then I can also fix this terrain here up here, like I said, there we go. So that gives you an overview of the rest of the tabs over here, the labels, layers, fog of war, trace underlay, and a little bit on shapes. You can also access those same things by using toolboxes, which are just kind of floating dialog boxes in case if that's an easier, it lets you see kind of more of the map at one time. But I think that covers this video. Next up in our Worldographer 2025 101 series, we'll be going over the various controls on the menu bar up here. So look for that in coming days. And I hope that the software is helpful for you. We'll have some links down below related to this video to the rest of the Worldographer 2025 stuff, as well as where to download it and where to look for more information on the exploration decks that Andrew has been working on for us. They're turning out great. We're really proud of them, and I wanted to bring that into the video a little bit too, to talk about them, because he really is doing a great job with giving you some more imaginative ideas that are more than just what you can get from going to an AI kind of thing. Really coming up with some things that are still make sense but are innovative and different, and not something that just an AI is going to pull out from all the trained data that it's got. So I hope that's helpful for you. Please look for future videos and subscribe and all that. Thanks a bunch. Bye.